Hey guys, tonight we are stepping quietly into the polished, carbon-smudged, coffee-scented world of the 1950s secretary, where the typewriter is heavy enough to qualify as office furniture, the telephone rings with moral authority, and your entire professional future may depend on whether you can take dictation at speed while pretending not to notice that your boss has misplaced both his schedule and his sense of proportion. We are not talking about every secretary, every office, or every woman who sat behind a desk with a stenography pad and a handbag containing emergency aspirin, lipstick, and possibly the last remaining portion of human patience in the building. Office life varied by race, class, region, education, age, marital status, company size, and the very practical question of whether the mimeograph machine had decided to perfume the entire floor with chemicals before lunch. Some women found secretarial work respectable, steady, sociable, and a real path into the white-collar world. Others found that the path came with a very small desk, very high expectations, and a promotion ladder that seemed to have been stored in the men's washroom. But for millions of working women, especially in offices shaped by post-war business culture, secretarial life came with hidden rules. You were expected to be efficient but not threatening, attractive but not distracting, cheerful but not silly, loyal but not too familiar, intelligent but not visibly ambitious, and always available to remember what everyone else had forgotten. You managed calendars, letters, filing systems, telephone calls, travel plans, invoices, office moods, and sometimes grown men who owned 3 suits but could not locate a document placed directly in front of them. The modern office ran on paper, polish, and women quietly preventing administrative collapse. Before we settle in, if you enjoy gently wandering through the stranger corners of ordinary history, you can like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to. No supervisor will summon you into his office with a pipe, a raised eyebrow, and a disappointing discussion about team spirit. And leave a comment telling me where you are listening from and what time it is there. There is something comforting about knowing that while one person is drifting off in Manchester, another is folding towels in Manila, and somebody in Michigan has just remembered an appointment from 3 Tuesdays ago, with the exact horror normally reserved for missing tax documents. The Quiet Hours is also on Spotify, so if you prefer to listen there while falling asleep, you will find the link in the description. Now, dim the lights, put on a fan, pull your blanket up, and get completely comfortable. Let your shoulders drop. Allow the day's unanswered messages, unfinished errands, and mysterious household noises to become the responsibility of some other department. And before we begin, consider a few questions. How many words per minute were you expected to type before being considered useful? How quietly could you correct a mistake on carbon paper before the entire document became a small legal tragedy? Was a secretary allowed to be clever, or only clever enough to make her boss look organized? Could you answer a telephone with warmth, firmness, discretion, and no hint that the caller had already rung 4 times and was beginning to resemble a weather event? What happened if you got married, became pregnant, wore the wrong shade of lipstick, laughed too loudly at lunch, or failed to laugh at a joke delivered by a man who believed his position in management also made him a comedian? How much coffee could one woman carry before she became a catering service with shorthand skills? And why did the office insist on calling you a girl when you were old enough to manage payroll, confidential correspondence, and the emotional temperature of an entire floor? Congratulations! You have just awakened in an American office in the middle of the 1950s. The fluorescent lights are humming, the typewriters are waiting. Your stockings have already made one private threat. You are expected to be at your desk before the boss arrives, because naturally the day cannot begin until someone else has prepared it. Your workday begins before the office sees you, in the bedroom mirror where professional respectability is assembled one careful piece at a time. A neat blouse, a fitted skirt, stockings, sensible heels, gloves if the commute requires them, and a face that suggests you are alert, pleasant, and unlikely to overthrow the accounting department, all must be arranged before breakfast has fully accepted its responsibilities. In the 1950s, a secretary's appearance is not merely personal. It is treated as part of the office's public image, like polished brass lettering on the door, except the brass is not expected to smile at visiting salesmen. You begin with the clothes. The blouse should be clean, modest, and fresh enough to imply that laundry has cooperated with your ambitions. The skirt should allow sitting, standing, bending toward a file drawer, and walking quickly after a man who has forgotten his own meeting, while never suggesting that fabric has opinions. A cardigan may soften the look, a jacket may sharpen it. Either way, the goal is to appear competent without crossing the invisible border into severity, because a secretary who looks too serious may be suspected of wanting a salary to match. Stockings are inspected with devotional attention. A run in a stocking is not merely damage, it is a tiny public announcement that your morning has lost control. Some women keep clear nail polish in a handbag to stop a run from travelling, because even hosiery must be managed before it becomes ambitious. A spare pair would be ideal, though ideals often cost more than the week allows. Seams, where present, need to sit straight along the back of the leg, a task that requires either a mirror, a patient friend, or the flexibility of someone training for an office-based circus. Shoes matter too. Heels should be feminine but practical enough to survive buses, pavements, stairs, and the long corridor between your desk and the file room. The office likes women to look graceful, but it also expects them to move quickly whenever a telephone rings. Beauty in this setting is not allowed to reduce efficiency. It is expected to report for work alongside it. Then comes the face. Powder reduces shine. Lipstick adds colour. Eyebrows are tidied. Hair is brushed into obedience. And earrings, if worn, must look pleasant rather than conversational. The ideal is not glamour exactly, though magazines and films offer plenty of polished examples. It is a carefully maintained office femininity, attractive, orderly, modest, and reassuring. You are supposed to look as though typing 60 words a minute is simply something a nice girl does after applying lipstick. These expectations vary. A secretary in a small-town insurance office, a city advertising agency, a law firm, a factory office, a government department, or a bank may face different standards. Black women, immigrant women, working-class women, and older women meet additional layers of scrutiny and discrimination that the cheerful training manuals rarely admit. But across many offices, the message is clear enough. Your appearance is part of the job, even when the job advertisement pretends to be about shorthand. At last, you pick up your handbag. Inside are coins, keys, compact, comb, tissues, perhaps a spare pair of stockings if finances allow, and the quiet knowledge that a surprising amount of business depends on women leaving the house correctly assembled. You check the mirror once more. The woman looking back seems capable, pleasant, and neatly pressed. The office has not opened yet, but it has already made demands. By the time you step onto the bus, streetcar, train, or crowded sidewalk, you are already performing the first quiet duty of the day, arriving untouched by the journey that has brought you there. The city smells of damp wool, exhaust, face powder, newsprint, and coffee carried in paper cups by men who will soon ask women where they put things. Your handbag is tucked close, your stockings are inspected for runs, and your shoes have begun negotiations with the pavement. The office may not pay you for commuting, but it still expects you to appear as though transportation has delivered you gently, rather than squeezed you through public machinery. The morning crowd has its own rules. Men in hats read newspapers folded into narrow columns. Women balance handbags, lunch bags, gloves, and sometimes the private fear that a heel will catch between the bus steps with an audience. The driver brakes sharply. Everyone sways together with the temporary intimacy of people who would rather remain strangers. Your skirt must be managed when you sit, your knees kept together, your handbag guarded, and your expression arranged into that urban middle distance that says you are aware of everyone and inviting conversation from no one. If you are commuting into a large city, the train station may feel like an office before the office. Tile floors, echoing announcements, cigarette smoke, shoe polish, wet overcoats, and the restless clicking of heels across stone. If you work in a smaller town, the trip may be a walk past shop windows, drugstores, diners, and parked cars with chrome catching the morning light. Either way, you are moving from private woman to public employee, a transformation conducted while avoiding puddles. Weather is not sympathetic. Rain threatens hair, shoes, gloves, and paper inside your bag. Wind behaves as though it has been personally hired to test skirts. Snow leaves slush at corners, and summer heat makes powder surrender by the time you reach the elevator. Yet the office will not want a weather report written across your face. You will remove gloves, smooth hair, check lipstick, and step inside as though the commute has been a light suggestion rather than a civic obstacle course. The route also carries social calculation. You may be expected to behave respectably on the way to work because office reputation is not believed to begin at the door. A secretary seen laughing too loudly on the street, smoking in the wrong place, or accepting a ride from the wrong man may become material for discussion before the first memo is typed. Respectability travels with you, which is inconvenient because it does not pay fare. For many women, commuting is also a small claim on independence. The bus pass, the train schedule, the lunch counter near the office, the newsstand where you buy a magazine, all belong to a daily geography outside the family home. You know which conductor is polite, which corner is crowded, which seat catches a draft, and which shop window lets you check your reflection without appearing to check your reflection. These are not grand freedoms, but they are yours, and they arrive with exact change. At the office building, the lobby floor shines with waxen footsteps. Elevators open and close, carrying clerks, executives, salesmen, typists, and receptionists upward into layers of paper and fluorescent light. You step inside with your coat buttoned and your work face nearly ready. By the time the elevator doors close, the city has already done its best to wrinkle you. You arrive smooth anyway, because that too is part of the job. The reception area is where the company presents its manners to the world, and somehow those manners are wearing your lipstick. You sit near a polished counter or a metal desk with a telephone, appointment book, visitor log, and a small vase of flowers that has received more budgetary approval than the stationery. Clients, deliverymen, applicants, executives, and wandering men with briefcases all pass through your orbit. You must greet them warmly, sort them correctly, delay them tactfully, and never reveal that behind the closed doors, the office is being held together by paper clips, caffeine, and one manager's fear of his own filing cabinet. The front desk is not just furniture, it is a border crossing. Everyone approaching it wants something, and most believe their need is urgent because they have brought a hat. You learn to read people before they finish clearing their throats. The salesman with the sample case wants access. The applicant wants reassurance. The client wants importance. The delivery man wants a signature. The executive from another floor wants to be recognized without having to introduce himself, because hierarchy becomes fragile when asked to state its name. Your greeting must be pleasant, but not overly familiar. Your smile must be warm, but not suggest leisure. You are the first proof that the company is orderly, respectable, and responsive. If the visitor is kept waiting, you must make delay feel intentional rather than chaotic. A phrase such as "Mr. Harrison will be with you shortly" may cover several possibilities, including a telephone call, a lost file, a closed-door argument, or Mr. Harrison eating a sandwich over a ledger while pretending to be unavailable for strategic reasons. The reception desk protects everyone from the raw facts. The telephone adds another layer. It rings while someone is standing before you, because machinery has poor timing. You answer, identify the firm, listen, connect, write a message, smile at the visitor, and locate the appointment book with a hand that appears to know what it is doing. In the same minute, you may need to remember who dislikes being interrupted, who must always be interrupted, and who claims to be in conference when he is actually reading the sports page. Your face remains calm. Your pencil knows the truth. Reception work often combines charm with gatekeeping. The company may describe you as the girl out front, but the girl out front controls access to men who consider themselves inaccessible. You decide who waits, who is announced, who receives coffee, who is sent to the wrong department by mistake, and who must be handled gently because the firm hopes to receive a check from him. This is not minor work. It is diplomacy with a switchboard nearby. The expectations can be especially sharp for women. You are supposed to look attractive because visitors see you first, but not so attractive that anyone admits the requirement aloud. You must be gracious to flirtation without encouraging it, firm with difficult callers without sounding unfeminine, and efficient without appearing to hurry the important. A receptionist who fails to smile may be criticized. A receptionist who smiles too much may also be criticized. The acceptable expression exists somewhere between welcome mat and bank vault. By late morning, the flowers lean slightly in their vase. The appointment book has acquired pencil marks, arrows, and small revisions nobody else could interpret. Men pass through your space as if it is an anteroom to real work. They do not see the quiet filtering, arranging, protecting, and translating that allows real work to continue behind them. The front desk smiles. The front desk knows everything. Your desk is expected to be tidy, but never empty, efficient, but never intimidating, feminine, but not frivolous, and ready to produce any document requested by a man who remembers neither its title nor its approximate relationship to reality. There is a typewriter, a blotter, sharpened pencils, carbon paper, letterhead, paper clips, an ashtray if the office allows smoking, and a telephone heavy enough to anchor a small boat. Every drawer contains a system. Every system depends on you. The boss may believe the office runs on decisions, but your desk knows better. The surface must communicate order. Incoming letters rest in one tray, finished typing in another, and items requiring signatures wait where they can be discovered by a man who will later claim he was just about to ask for them. A calendar sits within reach. A clock watches from the wall. The typewriter occupies the central position with the calm authority of a machine that knows it will be blamed for your mistakes and praised for your speed. Beside it are ribbons, erasers, correction sheets, envelopes, stamps, and the small practical tools of a paper civilization. Nothing here is accidental. A pencil placed badly can delay a message. A missing paperclip can become an expedition. A file left visible may reveal something private. A letterhead used carelessly may send the company's dignity into the mail with a typo. You learn to arrange the desk not only for work, but for appearances. It must look busy enough to prove usefulness, clean enough to prove competence, and controlled enough to soothe men who dislike evidence that businesses are complicated. The drawers hold the deeper machinery. One contains fresh stationery, perhaps separated by size, department, or the mysterious preferences of executives. Another holds carbons, envelopes, labels, notepads, rubber bands, index cards, and a small reserve of office supplies protected from communal disappearance. The bottom drawer may hold your handbag, gloves, lunch, spare stockings, and possibly a chocolate bar that has entered the office under confidential status. Your personal life is permitted at the desk only in portable closed form. The desk also becomes a memory device. You know which letter was posted, which invoice returned, which client prefers formal greetings, which supplier must be chased, and which manager always says a document is urgent after ignoring it for 3 days. Some of this knowledge is written down. Much of it lives in your head, which is risky for the office because it has not considered paying rent there. Decoration is allowed within limits. A small photograph, a flower, a calendar with pleasant scenery, or a neat compact in a drawer may soften the severity of metal and paper. Too much personality suggests unseriousness. Too little may suggest coldness. Even your desk must perform femininity in moderation, a task no filing cabinet has been asked to attempt. The ashtray, if present, belongs mostly to others. Men may stop by, talk, smoke, tap ash, and leave behind crumbs of conversation and tobacco. You empty it, wipe the desk, and continue typing as though your workspace has not just hosted a small weather system. In many offices, smoking is so ordinary that the air itself seems employed. By afternoon, the desk has absorbed the day, ringing calls, penciled notes, dictated letters, opened envelopes, smudged carbons, coffee rings narrowly prevented from becoming historical records. To anyone passing, it looks neat. To you, it is a map of unfinished obligations. The desk is not merely where you sit, it is where the office keeps its nervous system disguised as stationery. Once the boss begins dictating, your small notebook becomes a battlefield of loops, lines, abbreviations, and private panic conducted at respectable speed. Shorthand is one of the prized secretarial skills of the period. Taught in business schools and tested as though the fate of civilization depends on whether you can record a sentence about quarterly sales before the speaker forgets what he meant. You sit with pencil poised, eyes lowered, expression calm, while a man walks around the room composing a letter aloud and assuming that grammar will arrive later through feminine loyalty. Dictation has a ritual quality. The boss clears his throat, leans back, lights a cigarette, or begins pacing behind the desk as if motion will improve syntax. He may say "Dear Sirs" and then pause long enough for dust to form on the salutation. He may restart a sentence 3 times, insert a phrase from another thought, and ask you to strike that although striking it is simple in speech and more complicated in the small forest of marks racing across your page. Your hand moves quickly, translating his voice into symbols that would look like decorative wire to anyone untrained. Shorthand systems such as Gregg or Pitman are built for speed, allowing secretaries to capture speech far faster than ordinary handwriting. In business schools, students practice dictation, transcription, accuracy, and the art of remaining calm while language arrives in pieces. This skill can be a real source of pride. It is difficult, exacting work, and a good stenographer performs a kind of mental acrobatics while seated in a sensible skirt. The office, naturally, often describes this as taking notes. The problem is that speech is not a finished product. People repeat themselves, they wander, they begin a sentence with confidence and abandon it halfway, leaving you to decide whether it died peacefully or must be revived later. Some bosses dictate punctuation. Others assume punctuation exists in the atmosphere and will settle appropriately onto the page. One man says, comma, period, new paragraph. Another says nothing and expects the final letter to emerge with all clauses housebroken. You learn his habits. You know when, regarding the matter of means, the letter will be unpleasant. You know when a pause means thought, and when it means he has forgotten the name of the client. You know when to ask for clarification and when to wait, because asking too soon may make him feel interrupted, while asking too late may produce a typed sentence that appears to have suffered a fall. The stenography pad becomes a private record of someone else's authority before it has been cleaned for public use. This can place you close to confidential matters, contracts, complaints, personnel decisions, apologies that do not sound like apologies, and sales letters polished until uncertainty becomes enthusiasm. You hear the first version, the messy version, the human version. The typed letter will later appear firm and deliberate. You will know it began with a man staring out the window and saying, "How shall I put this?" There is also the physical strain. Your wrist tightens, pencil lead dulls, pages turn. The room may smell of tobacco, floor polish, hot radiator metal, and your boss's aftershave. You keep up because keeping up is the job. If you fall behind, the fault is yours, even when the sentence has taken a scenic route through 3 unrelated ideas. At last, dictation ends. The boss returns to something more comfortable, like having opinions. You take the notebook back to your desk, where the marks must become a letter, smooth, grammatical, and dignified. His thoughts have been captured. Now they need laundering. The typewriter sits on its stand like a black metal animal with excellent posture and no mercy. Each key requires pressure, rhythm, and faith. Each letter strikes the paper with a small mechanical judgment. If you type too slowly, you are inefficient. If you type too quickly, the keys may jam together in a little metal disagreement that stops the office cold. The sound fills the room. Clack bell, carriage return, clack again. In a typing pool, dozens of women produce the heartbeat of modern business, while the men in private offices call it clerical work, which makes it sound lighter than it is. You sit straight because posture is part of typing, and also because the chair has not been designed by anyone with private knowledge of the human spine. The paper must be rolled in cleanly, the margins set, the ribbon dark enough, and the line spacing correct before the first sentence begins. A mistake near the top of the page is annoying. A mistake near the bottom of the page becomes a small administrative tragedy. The machine does not offer sympathy. It offers a carriage return lever, a bell warning you that the edge of the paper is approaching, and keys that require enough force to make every paragraph feel earned. Manual typewriters are common through much of the decade, though electric models appear in some offices and promise speed with a faintly luxurious hum. The machine may be a Royal, Underwood, Remington, Smith Corona, or another office workhorse, each with its own weight, touch, and small personality defects. One key sticks, another prints slightly pale. The spacebar has opinions. The tab setting is either your ally or the reason a table becomes a public embarrassment. You learn the machine as one learns a difficult relative, closely, reluctantly, and with practical affection. Typing is not only speed, it is accuracy, layout, neatness, and endurance. Letters need proper indentation. Envelopes must be aligned so the address does not wander toward the stamp like a lost tourist. Tables require numbers to sit beneath one another with military dignity. Carbon copies demand firmer pressure, which means your fingers strike harder and the machine answers louder. By mid-morning, wrists, shoulders, and back have joined the correspondence. Training manuals and business schools praise typing speed, but the office praises speed only when it is also perfect. A man may dictate an untidy sentence and call it thinking. You may type one wrong letter and call it starting over. The typing pool magnifies the pressure. Rows of machines strike at once, producing a sound somewhere between rain on a tin roof and an organized insect uprising. Supervisors listen for rhythm, productivity, and silence in the wrong places. A pause may mean you are reading copy, changing paper, fixing a jam, or trying not to sneeze over a letter to a client. The room does not care. It keeps clattering. And yet there is skill in it, real skill. Your fingers learn patterns until words move through them faster than conscious thought. You can sense a typo almost before you see it. You know the small satisfaction of a clean page, the neat black lines, the letter centered properly, the signature space waiting with obedient calm. The office may call it routine, but routine has required training, muscle memory, attention, and the daily cooperation of a machine built like a compact piano with a grudge. At last, you pull the finished page free. It looks effortless, which is how the office prefers all difficult work to appear. The typewriter rests silently. It has punished you fairly and will be ready again in 5 minutes. Carbon paper promises efficiency and delivers suspense. One letter can become several copies. Provided all sheets are aligned correctly, pressure remains even, and no one makes an error on line 3 after the 4th copy has already absorbed the evidence. Your fingers become smudged with dark blue or black dust. The paper curls, slips, sticks, and betrays you. A simple memo becomes a layered diplomatic mission between original, duplicate, file copy, department copy, and the copy nobody will read but everyone insists must exist. Modern business has discovered duplication. It has not discovered forgiveness. You begin by building the stack. Fresh sheet, carbon sheet, tissue-thin copy paper, another carbon, another copy, and perhaps one more if the office believes information becomes more serious when multiplied. Everything must face the proper direction. Carbon paper has a coated side, and discovering it has been placed backward is the kind of revelation that arrives only after effort has already been wasted. The top page looks innocent. Beneath it waits a dark little treaty with consequences. Typing with carbons changes the way your hands behave. You press more firmly so the last copy can still be read by someone in another department who will complain if the letters look faint. The keys strike harder. The machine sounds more decisive. Your fingers pick up smudges along the edges, then transfer them to your palm, your cuff, the side of your nose, or a clean sheet of paper that had been living a blameless life until you touched it. Alignment is everything. If the stack shifts, the copies drift out of register, and the neat original acquires ghostly descendants that lean toward the margin with quiet disobedience. Removing the pages requires delicacy. One quick tug can smear a word. One careless motion can press a stray mark through several layers. You separate the sheets like evidence. The copies must be filed, circulated, attached, initialed, or sent to departments whose names appear in neat abbreviations that sound official enough to justify more paper. The system makes sense in a world before photocopiers become ordinary office companions. Businesses need records. Correspondence must be preserved. Departments need proof that someone has been informed. Even if being informed changes nothing, carbon copies create a memory trail, and the office loves memory when it comes in folders. But for the person typing, the trail begins under the fingernails. Errors become more dramatic with each layer. An ordinary type mistake on one sheet may be corrected with irritation. A mistake made through several copies feels like a family tragedy among papers. Erasing the original is difficult enough. Erasing carbon copies requires careful rubbing, repositioning, and the hope that the correction does not leave a pale wound visible to everyone who later handles it. Sometimes the only clean solution is to start again, which means rebuilding the stack, straightening the sheets, and pretending calm is still available. Carbon paper also introduces secrecy. Copies of confidential letters must be handled carefully. A discarded carbon may still carry impressions from the text, faint but readable if someone is curious and patient. Offices depend on discretion, Yet they produce objects that remember too much. You learn which sheets can be reused for ordinary work, which must be destroyed, and which should never be left on a desk where a wandering eye might discover a salary decision before the salary does. By afternoon, the wastebasket contains curled strips, used carbons, drafts, and the evidence of business making itself official. You wash your hands, but the blue stain remains in the creases. The copies have gone to their destinations, the paperwork has travelled, the carbon paper stayed behind to sign your fingers. The filing cabinet is tall, metal, stubborn, and possibly more powerful than several executives. Inside it, live contracts, invoices, personnel forms, correspondence, shipping records, customer accounts, and old documents that nobody needed until this morning, when they became urgent enough to justify shouting from another room. You know the categories, subcategories, cross-references, and private logic of folders whose labels have faded from years of handling. The office praises memory when it belongs to a man making a speech. When it belongs to you, it is called filing, as though paper kindly arranged itself out of gratitude. The drawers open with a heavy sliding sound, followed by the little metallic protest of hanging folders and index tabs. Some cabinets smell faintly of dust, ink, glue, and old decisions. There may be alphabetical files, numerical files, client files, active files, inactive files, correspondence files, and a special category best described as things Mr. Arnold insists are somewhere. You learn the filing system as a second language. A client may be filed under a company name, a surname, a project code, or a classification invented by a previous secretary whose handwriting has become office archaeology. Finding the right document may require knowledge, patience, and an ability to think like people who left the firm before you were hired. Filing appears simple from a distance because the cabinet stands still. This is misleading. Every piece of paper must be judged. Is it worth saving? Where will someone expect to find it? Should a cross-reference be made? Does it belong with the contract, the invoice, the letter that explains the invoice, or the later letter apologizing for the contract? A document put in the wrong folder has not disappeared. It has entered a private afterlife from which only luck, instinct, and your irritation may retrieve it. The office depends on these records. Before computers, before searchable databases, before anyone can summon a document by typing a few words into a glowing box, the file cabinet is institutional memory. It proves agreements, tracks customers, stores personnel decisions, preserves orders, and contains the correspondence everyone believes they remember accurately until the paper contradicts them. Men may debate what was promised. The file, when found, settles the matter with quiet paper authority. Of course, the file must first be found. That is where you enter. A manager appears at your desk and asks for the Henderson letter. Which Henderson? He is unsure. The one about the shipment? Which shipment? He grows philosophical. It was some time ago. He gestures vaguely, as if time itself has a folder. You ask questions, search drawers, check indexes, and finally produce a letter from 2 years ago that answers everything. He says, "Ah, there it is," as though the file had emerged voluntarily from nature. Filing also involves physical work. Drawers stick, folders grow fat, paper cuts appear with little ceremony. You squat, bend, reach, lift, and sometimes wrestle a cabinet that has chosen to hold on to its contents with industrial loyalty. A full drawer can trap your fingers, a misaligned folder can collapse into disorder. A file room in summer may become warm enough to suggest that information prefers a climate of punishment. Yet the work must remain invisible. If files are found quickly, nobody notices the system. If they are not found quickly, everyone notices you. By evening, you return folders to their precise places, straighten tabs, and close the drawers with a final metal thud. The office goes home believing it remembers things. The cabinet knows it does not. When the telephone rings, you answer with a voice carefully trained to sound bright, calm, helpful, and entirely unrelated to your actual feelings. The caller may be confused, impatient, flirtatious, angry, lonely, or convinced that the president of the company is waiting breathlessly for his opinion on freight charges. You connect calls, take messages, protect your boss from people he does not wish to speak with, and protect the caller from realizing he has been protected from. In the 1950s office, the telephone is not just equipment. It is a test of manners delivered at random intervals. The instrument sits on the desk with its coiled cord, heavy receiver, and rotary dial looking official and mildly accusatory. In larger offices, there may be a switchboard or a private branch exchange, with operators connecting lines through plugs and cords. In smaller offices, the telephone simply rings where everyone can hear it, meaning each call arrives with an audience. You lift the receiver before the second or third ring if possible, because promptness suggests competence. Letting it ring too long suggests disorder, even if you are currently holding 3 folders, a pencil, and the remains of your patience. Your voice must do several things at once. It must identify the company, sound pleasant, gather information, decide importance, and conceal any internal weather. A caller who is important must feel recognized. A caller who is not important must still feel handled. A caller who is angry must be soothed without being promised anything dangerous. You learn phrases that are soft enough to survive repetition. May I tell him who is calling? I will see whether he is available. May I take a message? These words appear simple. In practice, they are the velvet rope around power. Taking a message is its own art. Names must be spelled correctly, numbers written clearly, times noted, and tones interpreted. A client who says it is not urgent may mean it is urgent but wishes to appear reasonable. A supplier who says he called last week may mean he called someone, somewhere, possibly in a dream. You write carefully, because the message slip may later become the only proof that reality attempted contact. Screening calls requires discretion. Your boss may be in a meeting, at lunch, out of the office, unavailable, or sitting 6 feet away silently shaking his head. You must translate these conditions into respectable language. Saying he is not in may be useful. Saying he is hiding behind a trade journal would be accurate but professionally limited. The telephone voice protects him from interruption and protects the office from appearing evasive, a delicate balance performed while the caller breathes suspiciously into your ear. Gender complicates the task. A woman's telephone manner is expected to be warm, accommodating, and patient. If you are too firm, you may be called sharp. If you are too gentle, callers may push. Some men flirt because they hear a young woman's voice and assume the business day has become social. You laugh lightly, redirect, and return the conversation to invoices, appointments, or shipping dates, which are less romantic but more billable. By afternoon, the ring has trained your nerves. It interrupts typing, filing, lunch, and thought. It brings news, demands, complaints, and instructions. Yet the office depends on your ability to make every call sound manageable. When you hang up, the receiver settles into its cradle with a soft click. For a moment, the line is quiet. Then it rings again, because courtesy, like paper, is never finished. By mid-morning, coffee begins moving through the office like fuel through a temperamental machine. Someone must make it, pour it, carry it, remember who takes cream, who takes sugar, who claims to take neither but leaves evidence, and who treats a weak cup as though civilization has declined. Often that someone is you. The task may not appear in your job description, but job descriptions are delicate documents that prefer not to mention beverages. You carry cups between desks and offices while men discuss productivity, apparently unaware that productivity has just arrived with a saucer. The coffee corner, kitchenette, or percolator table becomes a small unofficial department. There may be a metal pot, a glass percolator, cups and saucers, a tin of ground coffee, sugar in a bowl, cream in a small pitcher, and spoons that disappear with the persistence of office rumours. The smell spreads first, bitter, warm, slightly burnt if the pot has been neglected, which it often has, because coffee is expected to remain available without ever becoming anyone's responsibility in writing. You learn the preferences. Mr. Walters takes 2 sugars but says 1, which means you give him 2 and preserve his self-image. Miss Clark drinks hers black because she has already negotiated with life and reached terms. The junior salesman accepts anything as long as it is free. The senior partner wants coffee brought in promptly when clients arrive, as though the cup itself demonstrates stability, prosperity, and the company's ability to boil water in a controlled manner. Serving coffee can reveal rank. Executives receive it in offices. Visitors may receive it as hospitality. Typists may fetch their own when there is time. You move between these worlds carrying cups like a diplomatic courier. A tray requires balance, timing, and the steady hand of someone who knows a spill on a contract can become an incident discussed until retirement. The cups rattle, The saucers slide. The hallway seems longer when hot liquid is involved. Office coffee is also social currency. Around the pot, women exchange practical information. Whose boss is in a mood, which client is late, which machine is sticking, which lunch counter has decent soup, and who is engaged, quitting, crying, or pretending not to be. Men may call it chatter. This is unfair. Chatter does not usually include operational intelligence about the entire floor. The coffee break, formal or informal, gives the day a small breathing space. In some workplaces, scheduled breaks are recognized. In others, they happen in the cracks between calls, typing, and errands. The pause may last only a few minutes, but those minutes matter. You warm your hands around the cup, inhale the steam, and remember that you possess a body separate from the filing system. Then someone asks whether there is more coffee. The gendered expectation is subtle because it arrives dressed as politeness. A man might make coffee in some offices, especially in smaller or more informal settings, but in many mid-century workplaces, serving and tidying easily become women's work, even when the women have been hired for typing, bookkeeping, dictation, and reception. Hospitality clings to secretarial labour. If a visitor compliments the coffee, the office is gracious. If the coffee is cold, someone looks toward you. By late afternoon, the pot has darkened into something more serious than a beverage. Cups gather rings, spoons rest in saucers. The air smells of paper, tobacco, and boiled ambition. You rinse what you can, refill what must be refilled, and return to your desk while the men resume discussing efficiency. The office runs on coffee. Naturally, the coffee is carried by someone whose work is considered secondary. Your boss owns the appointments, but you own the knowledge of whether they can survive contact with Monday. The calendar on your desk contains meetings, lunches, train times, birthdays, deadlines, calls to return, and one conference he insists is next week despite all printed evidence. You learn to schedule around moods, habits, rivalries, and the sacred period after lunch when nobody should ask him to make decisions involving numbers. Managing a man's time is treated as clerical assistance. In practice, you are performing a small daily act of weather forecasting with fountain pens. Quietly, precisely. The calendar is not merely a grid of dates. It is a map of danger. Monday mornings are too crowded. Friday afternoons are too hopeful. Late appointments risk colliding with trains, traffic, and the moment when everyone's attention begins putting on its coat. A meeting before coffee may be technically possible, but so is performing surgery with garden tools. You learn the difference between available and wise. Your boss may say he is free at 10, but you know he has a client call at 9:30, a report due at 11, and a temper that requires cooling between interruptions. Time on paper looks obedient. Time inside an office behaves like a secretary with better things to do. The appointment book holds layers of information that never appear in the printed squares. Mr. Green should not be scheduled after Mr. Lewis, because they dislike each other and pretend not to. The banker prefers mornings, the supplier always arrives late. The sales manager must be reminded twice, then told the reminder was his idea. Lunch is a business, social ritual, negotiation, and sometimes escape, all disguised as sandwiches and soup. A good secretary understands that calendars do not simply record events. They prevent collisions between personalities wearing suits. Birthdays and anniversaries add another burden. You remember your boss's wife's birthday before he does, perhaps because the office has quietly assigned you responsibility for domestic diplomacy as well as correspondence. You remind him to send flowers, sign a card, or leave early enough to avoid arriving home with an explanation instead of a gift. The line between office support and personal management grows thin, then transparent. Your desk becomes the place where professional obligations and family peace stop for inspection. Travel introduces further complications. Train timetables must be checked, reservations confirmed, tickets collected, and departure times written clearly enough that nobody can later blame the railways for his own reading. Business travel in the 1950s requires paper proof. Tickets, hotel confirmations, typed itineraries, addresses, telephone numbers, and enough duplicates to comfort everyone. You may arrange the journey, type the schedule, remind him to pack documents, and still hear him say he has a trip tomorrow as though it has appeared by weather. Deadlines live in the calendar too, though not all men respect their habitat. A report due Thursday begins bothering you on Monday. By Tuesday, you have placed the file where it cannot be ignored. By Wednesday, you mention it with professional softness. By Thursday morning, the deadline has become communal, which means you will be typing quickly while someone else says the whole matter crept up unexpectedly. This is why pencil is useful. Ink suggests confidence the office has not earned. At day's end, you turn the page, transfer unfinished calls, circle urgent items, and prepare tomorrow before tomorrow has introduced itself. Your boss owns the appointments. You own the arrangement that keeps them from attacking one another. A letter may begin with your boss saying, "Take this down," which is office language for, "Please turn the following wandering thoughts into a document suitable for customers, vendors, or legal survival." He speaks while pacing, smoking, looking out the window, or consulting a file he will later accuse you of hiding. You record every phrase, then quietly repair the structure, tone, punctuation, spelling, and occasional hostility before the letter is typed. His signature goes at the bottom. Your invisible fingerprints occupy the entire page. The dictation itself may sound confident in the room, but confidence is not the same as order. He begins with a firm opening, wanders into a complaint, remembers a figure, corrects the figure, adds that perhaps the whole thing should sound friendly, then says to make it strong. Strong and friendly are both possible, but they must first be introduced to one another. You take the notes, not merely capturing words but detecting intention. Is this letter meant to warn, flatter, soothe, refuse, demand payment, apologize without admitting fault, or imply disappointment in a tone that can still be mailed? Business correspondence carries emotional cargo in a stiff envelope. You are expected to pack it neatly, without letting anything rattle, leak, or arrive looking as annoyed as it sounded. Grammar becomes a form of office housekeeping. Sentences are swept into order, repetitions are removed. A dangling phrase is tucked where it will not embarrass anyone. The comma, quiet and underappreciated, prevents misunderstanding from entering the room with its hat on. You may correct spelling, smooth transitions, and translate sudden irritation into formal regret. "This is ridiculous" becomes, "We are somewhat concerned." "He ignored the agreement" becomes, "There appears to have been a misunderstanding." The finished letter sounds professionally, dignified, because dignity has passed through your typewriter wearing gloves. The historical office runs on such letters. Before quick electronic messages and searchable threads, correspondence is proof, persuasion, memory, and theatre. A well-typed letter can secure an order, preserve a client, document a dispute, or make the company appear calmer than it was 10 minutes earlier. The letterhead is crisp, the margins are even. The signature line waits. Everything suggests an orderly mind at work, though you know the mind was leaning against a radiator, asking whether Cincinnati has two ends. This is not deception exactly. It is translation between spoken male authority and written business civilization. Some bosses are skilled writers and dictate clean copy. Others rely heavily on secretaries to transform speech into correspondence, sometimes without acknowledging the labour. If the letter succeeds, he wrote it. If it contains an error, you typed it. Authorship in the office has a remarkable sense of direction. You also learn the personality behind the prose. One boss wants all letters short because patience has never been one of his investors. Another wants lengthy courtesy because he believes 3 paragraphs of warmth can disguise a delayed payment. A third dictates like a telegram sent by a man who distrusts verbs. You adapt, matching tone, formatting, and habitual phrases until you can produce a letter that sounds like him on his best day, which may be a day he has not personally attended. At last, the letter is typed, checked, signed, folded, placed in an envelope, and sent outward as official business. The recipient will never know the sentence that nearly happened. The office will keep a copy. The signature belongs to him. The grammar, mercifully, escaped under your supervision. A typing error is not merely a mistake. It is an event with consequences. Before modern computers and friendly delete keys, an incorrect letter may require an eraser, correction paper, a fresh sheet, or in serious cases, the complete emotional collapse of a nearly finished document. You scrape, rub, brush away crumbs, realign the paper, and pray the correction does not look like a small crime scene beneath the salutation. Some offices adopt newer correction fluids as the decade progresses, but not everyone trusts them. The safest solution remains not making the mistake, a policy admired chiefly by people who do not type. The error usually appears at the worst possible moment. It waits until the final paragraph, after the carbon copies have behaved, the margins have remained straight, and the letter has begun to look presentable enough to meet a client. Then your finger strikes the wrong key. A name loses a letter, a figure gains one, shipment becomes something less professional. The machine does not gasp. It simply prints the evidence in black ink and leaves you to consider whether your entire future has been altered by the left index finger. Corrections require tools and nerve. A typewriter eraser is small, rough, and shaped for work that never feels dignified. You rub carefully, trying to remove ink without thinning the paper into a pale, fuzzy patch. Eraser crumbs scatter across the page. You brush them away with a little whisk or the side of your hand, which risks adding smudges because office supplies enjoy teamwork. The page must then be rolled back into exactly the same position. If alignment fails, the corrected letter floats slightly above or below the line, announcing that something unfortunate happened here and was handled with optimism. Correction paper offers another method. You insert the coated strip, strike the wrong character again, and hope the covering mark blends into the page. It can work well on some machines and papers, less well on others. The result may be acceptable for an internal memo, but a formal letter on company stationery demands higher standards. A smudged correction on a letter to an important client suggests carelessness, and carelessness is often assigned to the person at the keyboard rather than the person who dictated a sentence with 3 endings. Carbon copies increase the stakes. Correcting 1 page is annoying. Correcting 5 copies is an archaeological project. Each layer must be handled, rubbed, covered, or abandoned. Sometimes the copies are too faint, too smeared, or too damaged to save. Then everything starts again. Fresh sheets, fresh carbons, fresh patience, which is unfortunate because patience was already in limited supply. You learn to proofread in stages, names first, numbers next. Dates, addresses, greetings, enclosures, and signatures. The eye slows down, the finger traces a line. You read aloud under your breath, quietly enough not to disturb the typing pool, but clearly enough to catch what the mind has kindly corrected without permission. The brain sees what should be there. The paper sees what is there. The paper is more reliable and less tactful. The emotional rule is simple: never look too upset. A secretary must fix errors calmly, even when the page represents 20 minutes of careful work and 1 disastrous tap. You remove the sheet, begin again if necessary, and keep your face composed. The office calls this neatness. You know it as grief management with stationery. When the corrected page finally passes inspection, it looks clean, orderly, and inevitable. Nobody sees the erased patch, the discarded drafts, or the small storm of crumbs swept into the wastebasket. The final document appears perfect, which means the mistake has successfully become your private history. You are expected to know the answer, but not enjoy knowing it too much. You may understand the client account, the office procedure, the shipping schedule, and the reason the manager's plan will fail by Thursday. But presenting this knowledge requires caution. Intelligence is welcome when it serves someone else's authority. It becomes less welcome when it seems to possess a chair of its own. So you phrase your observations as reminders, suggestions, or gentle questions. The idea enters the room wearing slippers, and if successful, leaves in a man's hat. The rule is not printed in the employee handbook, because the most durable rules often prefer not to risk evidence. You learn it by watching faces. A direct correction can make a man stiffen. A useful reminder, offered softly, may save the same man from embarrassment. That invoice was already paid may sound like a challenge. I believe we may have settled that last week. Sounds like assistance. The facts are identical, only the upholstery has changed. In many 1950s offices, secretaries sit close to information without sitting close to authority. You know the correspondence, the files, the customers, the timing, the habits, and the sequence by which decisions become paperwork. You may be the person who notices that a meeting conflicts with a delivery, that a contract has an older clause, or that a client called twice and is no longer in a mood to admire patience. This knowledge is practical, detailed, and valuable. It is also expected to behave modestly. Ambition is the difficult part. A man who wants advancement is considered promising. A woman who wants advancement may be considered restless, unfeminine, or likely to leave for marriage anyway, which is a convenient way of denying both promotion and prophecy. Secretarial work can offer skill, wages, respectability, and genuine responsibility, but the path upward often narrows quickly. You may be trusted with confidential letters but not invited to the meeting that explains them. You may prepare the report but not present it. You may train a junior man who will later become your superior, a process that gives the office continuity and you a front row seat to arithmetic no one wishes to discuss. So you learn the art of strategic softness. You ask whether Mr. Daniels might prefer the other contract. You wonder if the train time should be checked once more. You mention that Miss Peterson telephoned yesterday about the same matter. You place the correct file on the desk before it is requested. If the boss reaches the right conclusion, everyone is relieved. If he believes he reached it alone, the office is even more relieved. This is not because you lack confidence. It is because confidence has to pass through the furniture without scratching anything. There are women who push harder, speak plainly, move into office management, bookkeeping, personnel, publishing, advertising, law offices, or other fields where intelligence can claim more room. Their experiences vary by education, race, class, employer, and timing. But in many clerical settings, the safest cleverness is disguised as helpfulness. You become fluent in the language of almost invisible competence. The emotional cost is subtle. Day after day, you watch ideas leave your mouth as suggestions and return as someone else's decision. You learn not to flinch when your own phrase comes back in a deeper voice. You type the memo, circulate the instruction, and file the copy. The office has benefited from your mind. It will send thanks to your attitude. Your name at the office is never only your name. It arrives with assumptions attached. Miss if you are unmarried, Mrs. if you are married, and a great deal of curiosity either way. Marriage can affect how employers see your reliability, future plans, pay, and usefulness. An unmarried secretary may be treated as temporary until she finds a husband. A married one may be treated as temporary until she becomes inconveniently pregnant. You sign letters, answer calls, and label folders while the office quietly files you too, under categories no cabinet would admit. The distinction begins on forms, nameplates, introductions, and pay records. Miss suggests youth, availability, and perhaps a future not yet settled. Mrs. suggests respectability, domestic obligations, and perhaps a future the office assumes will soon become too crowded for typing. Either title can be used politely, and many women value them as markers of social status. But inside the workplace, they can become small administrative windows into private life. The office wants to know not only who you are, but what claims may eventually be made upon you. If you are unmarried, colleagues may ask about boyfriends, engagements, dances, and whether someone has taken you to dinner. Your romantic life becomes harmless conversation, which is another way of saying it is not always harmless and not entirely yours. A young secretary may be expected to work for a few years before marriage, gaining wages, polish, and perhaps the useful ability to type her husband's letters someday. A destiny so efficient it must have pleased someone in a chair. Employers may invest in your skills while quietly assuming your long-term loyalty belongs elsewhere. If you are married, the questions change. Does your husband mind you working? Are you working for extra money? For a house, for a car, until children arrive? Some married women need the wage, some enjoy the work, some support families, some are widowed or separated, and some simply do not consider competence a condition that expires at the altar. Yet the office may still read marriage as a warning label. A married woman could be seen as steadier than a very young girl, but also as temporary in a different direction. Pregnancy looms in the employer's imagination, even when it is nowhere in yours. Formal protections are limited, and many workplaces expect women to leave when pregnancy becomes visible, sometimes by policy and sometimes by custom. The pressure is tangled because respectability matters. Being married can protect a woman from some forms of suspicion while introducing others. Being unmarried can make her seem mobile and employable while inviting jokes about finding a husband. Older unmarried women may be treated as dependable and slightly pitiable by people with very small imaginations. Divorced women may face gossip. Black women and women from immigrant or working-class backgrounds may encounter additional assumptions shaped by prejudice as much as by marital status. None of this appears in the shorthand test. It still affects the desk you are offered. Titles also shape how customers and callers address you. A man may ask for the girl, even if the girl is 32 and knows the accounts better than he knows his own invoice. Mail may arrive addressed formally to male executives while secretaries are called by first names. Familiarity travels downward more easily than upward. You answer politely because correcting every slight would require its own department. By the end of the day, your name has been spoken, shortened, titled, assumed over, and attached to work that carries someone else's signature. You close the file drawer and put on your gloves. The office knows whether you are Miss or Mrs. It remains less certain what to do with you either way. At noon, you leave the desk only after making sure the telephone is covered. The boss knows where he is supposed to be, and no urgent letter is waiting like a paper animal in a tray. Lunch might be a sandwich at a counter, soup in a cafeteria, a packed meal eaten with other girls from the office, or a hurried errand involving stockings, aspirin, or a birthday card for someone you do not especially wish to celebrate. The hour is yours in theory. In practice, it belongs partly to hunger, partly to errands, and partly to the office clock, which watches with professional suspicion. You collect your handbag, check your compact, and step out with the strange relief of someone temporarily released from carbon paper. The street outside is louder than the office. Buses sigh at curbs, heels strike pavement, delivery trucks idle, and restaurant doors open with little bursts of fried onions, coffee, perfume, cigarette smoke, and wet wool if the weather has been unkind. Lunch counters and cafeterias know the office crowd well. They offer tuna sandwiches, egg salads, soup, pie under glass, coffee that has been waiting with heroic endurance, and waitresses who move with the speed of women who have no patience for indecision disguised as manners. If you eat with other secretaries, the conversation begins lightly because the day has not permitted a graceful transition into despair. Someone complains about a boss who dictates through sandwiches. Someone else has a run in her stocking. Someone knows which drugstore has cheaper lipstick. Office friendships are built in these intervals, between bites, errands, and the shared understanding that a man who says just one more letter before lunch has never been truly hungry in a typing pool. Yet lunch is never quite free from performance. You cannot return smelling too strongly of onions. You cannot spill soup on your blouse unless you wish to spend the afternoon with evidence. You may need to watch the cost, because wages must stretch across transportation, clothing, family help, and the quiet expenses of remaining employable. A cheap lunch can feel responsible. A proper lunch can feel necessary. Dessert requires negotiation with both budget and waistband, two committees known for disagreeing. Sometimes lunch is not lunch at all. It is an errand disguised as a meal break. You buy stamps, pick up nylons, drop off dry cleaning, mail a personal letter, collect office supplies, or choose a birthday card for the boss's wife because apparently emotional administration has also gone out for a sandwich. If you are courting, engaged, married, or supporting relatives, the hour may be filled with letters, phone calls, bank lines, or small purchases that prove your life exists beyond the desk. Though it is being forced to fit between 12 and 1, respectability follows you. A woman eating alone at a counter may be ordinary in a city and still be watched by someone with spare judgment. Laughing loudly with friends can seem youthful. Sitting too long with a male co-worker can become material for office weather reports. You learn to enjoy yourself within invisible railings. The clock brings everything back. You check the time, gather gloves and handbags, smooth your skirt, and return through revolving doors into the building's cooler air. Your boss may ask, as though making conversation, whether you had a nice lunch. You say yes. It is easier than explaining that your free hour contained a sandwich, 3 errands, 2 warnings, and a receipt you must not lose. Lunch has ended. The office has resumed ownership. Before you reach the desk, you may have sat in a classroom learning shorthand, typing, bookkeeping, business English, telephone manners, and the moral importance of clean margins. Secretarial schools and commercial colleges promise respectable employment, especially for young women who want wages, city life, and a place in the white-collar world without alarming relatives too severely. The training is practical and disciplined. It teaches speed, accuracy, posture, diction, and obedience to office forms. It also suggests that independence is possible, provided it arrives neatly dressed and does not ask too many questions about management. The classroom smells of chalk, machine oil, paper, floor wax, and the faint heat rising from rows of typewriters being tested by nervous fingers. A teacher stands at the front with a stopwatch, a lesson plan, and the calm authority of someone who has seen entire futures ruined by poor margins. You sit with other young women, shoulders squared, wrists lifted, eyes on copy, learning that each stroke must be firm enough to print cleanly but not so dramatic that the machine sounds personally offended. Speed tests arrive like small storms. Words per minute matter. Errors matter more. A fast typist with messy copy is not a triumph. She is a warning with good rhythm. Shorthand lessons require another kind of concentration. Lines, curves, hooks, and abbreviations become a private written language, designed to catch speech before it runs away. At first, the symbols look impossible. Then they begin to open. A phrase becomes a shape. A sentence becomes a trail of marks. You learn to listen ahead, right behind, and trust that your hand will remember what your mind has not had time to admire. Bookkeeping adds columns, figures, balances, and the moral chill of numbers that refuse to flatter you. Business English teaches clear letters, proper salutations, correct punctuation, and the difference between friendly and overly familiar, a distinction the office will later test hourly. Telephone training gives your voice a uniform. You practice sounding pleasant, efficient, and calm, because modern business believes a woman can make the company appear civilized through one receiver and a carefully measured vowel. The promise is real. For many women, secretarial training offers access to paid work that is cleaner, steadier, and more socially acceptable than factory labor or domestic service. It can mean leaving a farm town, helping parents, paying for clothes, delaying marriage, supporting yourself after widowhood or divorce, or simply possessing money that does not arrive through another person's wallet. Commercial education can be a ladder, even if the ladder has been placed against a fairly low ceiling. The limitations are also present, though not always written on the brochure. Training prepares you to assist, not to command. You learn the language of business, but often from the side of the desk where signatures are typed for others. You are taught to be accurate, loyal, tasteful, discreet, and efficient. These are excellent qualities. They are also convenient qualities for employers who want skilled labor wrapped in deference. Race and class shape access. Not every woman can afford business school, and discriminatory hiring restricts which offices will accept which graduates. Black women, immigrant women, and working-class women may possess the skill and still face narrower doors. The classroom may promise opportunity in a neat font, while the labour market adds handwriting underneath. Still, you practice. The bell rings. The time test begins. Keys strike, carriage returns snap, pencils move across shorthand pads, and clean pages stack like possible futures. You are being trained for independence. The lesson ends with posture, accuracy, and a reminder to smile when answering the telephone. Even freedom apparently should sound agreeable. In the typing pool, rows of desks hold women working beneath the shared weather of bells, carriage returns, ringing telephones, and the supervisor's careful eye. The room is social, competitive, exhausting, and strangely intimate. Everyone knows whose boss dictates badly, whose machine sticks, who is engaged, who cried in the washroom, and who can type clean copy at a speed that should earn a medal or at least better ventilation. The pool may be the company's engine room, but the office often treats it as background noise, which is convenient if one prefers engines not to request promotion. You take your place among the machines, place the copy where it can be read, roll in the paper, and enter the rhythm. The sound is not one typewriter but many, a dense mechanical rain that rises and falls with deadlines. Clack, 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 bell lever, paper, clack again. Someone coughs. Someone sighs. Someone whispers that Mr. Benton has changed the entire letter after dictating it twice, which suggests either perfectionism or a private vendetta against stationery. The typing pool is efficient because work can be distributed quickly. Reports, letters, invoices, lists, statements, and memos arrive in piles. A supervisor assigns them, tracks completion, checks accuracy, and notices who is fast, who is careless, who is late, and who has paused too long with her fingers resting above the keys. The room measures women constantly, sometimes openly through speed tests and sometimes quietly through reputation. A good typist becomes known, a careless typist becomes known faster. There is companionship here, and it matters. You learn which woman has spare carbon paper, which one knows how to coax a ribbon back into use, Which one will cover for you if you need to powder your nose after a difficult call? Lunch plans are made between pages. Engagement rings are inspected during pauses. Salary rumours travel under the clatter like messages in code. A typing pool can be a hard place, but it is not empty of loyalty. Women who are treated as interchangeable by management often become quite specific to one another. Competition sits nearby. The pool may be the place where supervisors select someone for a private secretary position, a better desk, a raise, or the privilege of handling a more important man's confusion. Speed and accuracy can open small doors. They can also trap you in evidence of your usefulness. If you are too good, the office may decide it cannot spare you. If you are not good enough, it may decide the opposite. The ideal worker is somehow excellent and movable only when convenient to others. The physical environment is its own trial. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. Windows may or may not open. Cigarette smoke from other rooms drifts in with businesslike confidence. Chairs scrape. Typewriter ribbons stain fingers. The air warms with machinery, paper, bodies, and impatience. You sit for hours, shoulders tight, back straight, wrists active, eyes scanning copy until words become shapes and shapes become obligations. A mistake made in the pool has witnesses. So does a triumph. When you finish a difficult report cleanly, another woman may glance over and nod, which is sometimes worth more than praise from a man who believes the machine did most of it. By late afternoon, the room is tired but still moving. Pages stack, bells ring. The supervisor gathers finished work. Upstairs, managers discuss efficiency. Down here, efficiency has sore wrists and knows exactly who changed the margins yesterday. Somewhere beyond the main desks is a room or corner containing machines that promise modern efficiency while smelling faintly like a laboratory with secret regrets. Duplicators, mimeographs, adding machines, addressographs, and other devices help the office produce more paper than anyone previously believed necessary. You turn handles, feed sheets, check copies, replace ribbons, and watch ink appear where ink should not. The machines are advertised as labour-saving, which in office language often means one woman can now be responsible for twice as much work while a motor hums beside her. The machine room is not grand. It may be a back corner, a narrow supply room, or a space beside the files where paper reams are stacked with the solemnity of building materials. The air smells of ink, oil, wax stencils, solvent, dust, and warm metal. It is the smell of business reproducing itself. A typed letter feels personal. A duplicated circular feels official, especially if it emerges in stacks high enough to suggest that management has discovered a new species of urgency. The mimeograph has its own ritual. A stencil is prepared, often typed carefully because mistakes on a stencil can reproduce themselves with missionary zeal. The stencil is attached to the drum, ink is applied, paper is fed through, and the handle or motor sets the process moving. Each sheet receives its copy, slightly damp, slightly sharp smelling, and sometimes decorated with smudges that were not part of the plan. Spirit duplicators, often remembered for their purple ink and sweet chemical smell, appear in schools and offices too, producing copies that look temporary even when they are important. The office does not mind. If it can be circulated, initialed, and filed, it has achieved adulthood. Adding machines click and rattle nearby. Their keys are heavy, their paper tapes curl, and their totals carry the authority of numbers that have made noise. You enter figures, pull a lever, or hear the machine print, and check the result against ledgers that must balance because arithmetic has no sympathy for fatigue. A small error in a column can send you backward through invoices, receipts, and penciled marks, looking for the moment a number stepped quietly out of line. Addressing machines and label systems promise speed for mailings, customer lists, and company announcements. They help send the same message to many people, which means one error can now reach an audience. A wrong address, a misspelt name, or a duplicated label becomes proof that modern machinery has improved the distribution of embarrassment. You feed cards, plates, or labels, keep stacks straight, and try to prevent the machine from chewing paper with the confidence of an animal that has never paid for stationery. These devices are useful. They genuinely save time, compared with copying by hand or typing every letter individually. But usefulness does not eliminate labour. It changes the kind of labour. You must learn the machine, maintain supplies, clean parts, replace ink, fix jams, count copies, collate pages, and discover why page 3 has disappeared from every packet except the one meant for the least patient client. The men who request the copies often see the finished stack. You see the crank, the smear, the jam, and the blue stain on your cuff. By late afternoon, the machine room has produced circulars, lists, totals, labels, and several odours that will remain with your hair until evening. You turn off the motor, stack the copies, and return to your desk carrying the future in paper form. Progress has arrived. It needs wiping down. The office contains many reasons to become angry, but very few acceptable ways for you to express it. A man may be brisk, forceful, demanding, or under pressure. You may be difficult. So you translate irritation into efficiency, insult into a tighter smile, and unreasonable requests into phrases such as, "I will see what I can do." The emotional labour is constant, though nobody calls it that. You absorb impatience from callers, confusion from clients, moods from bosses, and condescension from men who need you to spell Cincinnati. By 5 o'clock, your politeness has performed manual labour. It begins in small doses. A file is missing because someone took it without signing it out, but the question lands on your desk as though you personally hid it for exercise. A letter must be retyped because the man who approved it has now discovered a new opinion. A caller complains that he has been waiting all morning, although he first telephoned 7 minutes ago and has used those minutes richly. Each event is minor. Together, they become a stack. You cannot slam the drawer, though the drawer has earned a conversation. You cannot tell the boss that his emergency was created by his own neglect, though the evidence is sitting in your tray wearing yesterday's date. Instead, you stand, locate the file, remake the letter, soothe the caller, and keep your voice level enough to qualify as office equipment. The rules are gendered but often disguised as manners. Women are expected to be pleasant, patient, cooperative, and tactful, especially in clerical and service roles where the work involves people as much as paper. A man's irritation may be read as seriousness. Yours may be read as temperament. A man who raises his voice is under strain. A woman who does it may be unprofessional, emotional, or unsuitable for front office contact, which is an efficient way to make anger both provoked and forbidden. You learn substitutions. Irritation becomes speed. Hurt becomes extra neat margins. Disbelief becomes a pause before answering. You use phrases that sound harmless and do useful work. Let me check that for you. I believe the letter was sent yesterday. Perhaps Mr. Wilson has the file. I will make a note of it. These sentences are padded rooms for stronger thoughts. The office hears courtesy. Your bloodstream hears symbols. Sometimes anger has nowhere proper to go, so it waits until lunch, the powder room, the elevator, or the walk home. In the washroom, another secretary may catch your eye in the mirror and know exactly what has happened without asking for minutes. A lipstick is uncapped. A tissue is folded. Someone says, "He is in one of his moods," and the phrase covers incompetence, rudeness, and the fact that everyone must now orbit one man's weather system. The calm returns, not because the anger was imaginary, but because the work still requires completion. There are also risks to showing too much frustration. Jobs matter, wages matter, references matter. A reputation for being pleasant can protect employment, even when pleasantness has become a room you are locked inside. You may need the job to support yourself, help family, save for marriage, leave a bad situation, or simply keep your independence from shrinking. The choice to remain polite is not weakness. It is often strategy conducted under fluorescent light. At the end of the day, you place finished letters in the tray, straighten your desk, and answer one last call in a voice so smooth it could be used to polish brass. The office has mistaken your restraint for ease. It has no idea how many sentences you did not say. Some office attention is presented as friendly, flattering, or simply part of the atmosphere. Compliments on your dress, jokes at the filing cabinet, invitations to lunch, a hand resting too long on the back of your chair, a boss who believes dictation requires unnecessary proximity. The language for workplace harassment is not yet widely available, and the burden often falls on you to manage the discomfort without damaging your reputation, your job, or someone else's sense of himself as charming. You learn to step aside, laugh lightly, become busy, and keep the room from discovering what it already knows. The skill required is quiet, constant, and almost never counted as work. A man pauses beside your desk and remarks on your blouse when the only proper subject is the invoice in his hand. Another asks whether you have a sweetheart, as though the company's filing system has left a gap marked personal curiosity. A client calls you dear, honey, sweetheart, or little lady, while requesting information that requires the competence of a person old enough to object. The office may smile at these moments because smiling is easier than admitting that the room has rules only one side is expected to observe. Not every compliment is threatening. Not every man is cruel or predatory. Many offices include decent colleagues, ordinary friendships, and harmless joking that remains harmless because everyone understands the boundary. The trouble is that the boundary often belongs to you to protect, while others are allowed to treat it as a charming mystery. If you object too plainly, you may be called cold, proud, humorless, or difficult. If you do not object, someone may assume permission has been granted by silence, which is a remarkably convenient reading of manners. You become fluent in small evasions. You stand up so a hand cannot remain on your chair. You pick up a folder and walk toward the file room. You answer a personal question with a professional one. You laugh lightly, not because the joke is funny, but because a light laugh can close a door without slamming it. You avoid being alone in a room with certain men when possible, and when not possible, you keep the dictation pad between you like a small paper fence. Even clothing becomes part of the calculation. A new dress may invite comment, while the same dress worn too often may invite another sort. You did not ask the office to inspect fabric as though it were a quarterly report, but the office has developed many hobbies. Reputation is fragile, especially for women. A man may pursue, imply, linger, or suggest, yet the story that travels through an office may still attach itself to the woman who was pursued. She encouraged him. She was too friendly. She was not friendly enough. She should have handled it better. The phrase itself is a marvel, because handling it better usually means handling someone else's behavior without letting anyone notice the behavior occurred. The options are narrower when the man has authority. A boss controls assignments, references, raises, and the daily weather around your desk. A secretary who needs the wage may decide that endurance is safer than complaint. This does not make the discomfort small. It means the calculation is large. You learn to protect your job, your name, and your peace in ways that leave almost no paperwork. By evening, the moment has passed outwardly. The chair is straight, the letter is typed, the smile has returned to its official position. The office calls it friendliness. You know how much of friendliness was self-defense. Payday arrives with a small thrill and a quieter insult. The envelope contains independence, rent, bus fare, stockings, lunches, family help, savings, and proof that your labour has entered the economy, though apparently through a very narrow door. Clerical work is often considered women's work, and women's work has a remarkable habit of becoming cheaper once women do it. You may handle invoices worth thousands, prepare letters that secure business, and maintain records essential to the company. Then you receive wages that suggest the office believes accuracy is nice, but masculinity is expensive. The envelope may be handed out discreetly, collected from a pay window, or received with the ordinary solemnity of money arriving after a week of obedience. Inside is cash, or a check, with deductions already removed by systems you may understand better than the man explaining them. You know what the amount must cover. Transportation first, because work is difficult to attend from a room you cannot afford to leave. Lunches, stockings, laundry, shoes, cosmetics, gifts, rent if you live away from family, contributions at home if your wages help parents or siblings. A secretary's pay may look personal to those who imagine women work for pin money. The bills are less imaginative. The phrase pin money has a charming antique sound, as though your wages are being spent entirely on ribbons and whims. In reality, many women depend on clerical wages, and many families depend on women's earnings. Some unmarried women support themselves. Some married women help pay rent, food, medical bills, or debt. Widows and separated women may have no decorative theory available at all. The money matters. That is partly why the insult matters too. Clerical work has shifted heavily toward women by the mid-20th century, and the association helps keep wages low. The work requires literacy, numeracy, memory, accuracy, composure, and a high tolerance for other people's disorganization. Yet because it is feminized, it can be treated as natural rather than skilled. A man handling money may be called responsible, You handling accounts may be called careful, which is praise wearing a smaller hat. Pay is also shaped by age, race, education, region, office size, and discrimination. A young white secretary in a city firm, a black clerical worker facing restricted opportunities, a woman in a small-town insurance office, and an older woman supporting herself may all sit at desks. But the wages and prospects around those desks differ sharply. The office likes to speak of merit. The pay envelope often speaks a more complicated language. You may compare wages quietly with other women, though employers usually prefer silence to mathematical friendship. Someone earns more because she works for a senior executive. Someone earns less because she is new. Someone suspects the junior man she trained is already paid better, a thought that can make a cup of coffee taste legal. You may not know the full scale, but you know enough to feel the arithmetic breathing under the door beside your own office desk. Raises are possible, but asking for one requires nerve. You must present need as value as gratitude, and gratitude as continued cheerfulness. Too much confidence may seem unfeminine. Too little may leave you poor in a very agreeable manner. At the end of the day, you place the envelope in your handbag with care. It is independence, proof, and arithmetic folded together. The office has purchased your week. It remains surprised that you have counted the price. There are men in the office who began after you, no less than you, and will be promoted before you with the smoothness of natural law. You may train them, explain the filing system, remind them of procedures, and type the memo announcing their advancement. The company may praise your loyalty, your skill, your good attitude, and your irreplaceable support. Irreplaceable in this setting means too useful to move and not important enough to advance. The ladder exists. You can see it clearly. It is just positioned on the other side of a door marked private. The young man arrives with a college ring, a nervous handshake, and the cheerful expectation that business will eventually recognize his inner executive. At first, he does not know where the forms are kept, how the accounts are coded, which client dislikes being called before noon, or why the manager's red pencil should be treated like weather. You show him. You explain the files, the calendars, the procedure for purchase orders, the names behind the initials, and the office customs nobody has written down because writing them down would reveal that the whole system depends on women quietly translating it. He thanks you, sincerely perhaps. Then the training continues. He attends meetings. You prepare the folders. He drafts a memo badly. You type it cleanly. He asks how to handle a client. You provide the useful answer, phrased as a suggestion. He repeats it later with confidence. People nod. This is how authority sometimes grows, watered by someone else's competence. Promotion in the 1950s office is often tied to gendered assumptions about career and future. Men are expected to build careers, support families, and rise. Women are often expected to assist for a few years, marry, leave, or remain in clerical roles where their steadiness benefits everyone above them. Some women do advance, especially into senior secretarial, office manager, bookkeeping, personnel, or administrative positions, depending on employer, education, and opportunity. But many find that skill deepens the chair beneath them rather than opening the next door. Being indispensable can become a trap with good stationery. If you're the only one who knows the filing system, they cannot spare you. If you handle the boss perfectly, he will not want to lose you. If your typing is fast, your judgment sound, and your memory reliable, the company may reward you by keeping you exactly where your usefulness is most convenient to them. A man may be promoted because he shows potential. You may be held back because you show results. The logic is tidy enough to be displayed in a shop window if anyone had the courage. The private office carries symbolism. Men inside it have doors, desks with visitors' chairs, telephones no one else answers, and the right to be unavailable. You outside it have access, knowledge, and sometimes more practical control over what happens, but not the title that acknowledges it. You schedule the meetings where advancement is discussed. You type the letters that confirm it. You file the personnel notes. The evidence passes through your hands on its way around you. Even the congratulatory memo may begin as your own clean copy. At last, the promoted man stops by your desk, pleased and slightly solemn. You congratulate him. You mean it partly. He is not the whole system. He is only its newest beneficiary. Then you type the announcement without error. The ladder has moved again. You have polished another rung. When the office party begins, The workday loosens its collar but not its hierarchy. There may be punch, cigarettes, music, paper decorations, trays of sandwiches, and men who become surprisingly sentimental after 2 drinks. You are expected to be cheerful, sociable, attractive, and careful. Too little participation seems unfriendly. Too much becomes memorable in the wrong way. A secretary must navigate the strange little republic between professional restraint and festive obligation, laughing at jokes, avoiding corners, guarding her reputation, and remembering that Monday morning has a long institutional memory. The party may happen before Christmas, after a sales goal, for a retirement, or because management has discovered that morale can be addressed with paper streamers. Desks are pushed back, ashtrays multiply. Someone brings sandwiches cut into triangles, olives speared on toothpicks, cheese cubes, deviled eggs, cookies, and punch whose strength may depend on which man stood nearest the bottle. The office smells of perfume, tobacco, coffee, wool suits, and food arranged on stationery tables that were never designed for ham salad. At first, the mood is pleasant. You speak with other women from the pool or reception desk. Someone compliments your dress. Someone else whispers that the bookkeeper has already had enough punch to become conversational with the coat rack. Music plays from a radio or record player, and the fluorescent lights make celebration look slightly audited. You are allowed to relax, but not completely. Relaxation in an office party is conditional. You may laugh, but not too loudly, dance perhaps, but not too closely, drink, but not enough for anyone to count, leave early and you seem chilly. Stay late and you may become part of a story told by men who describe themselves as good sports. The rules are informal, which makes them more dangerous and much harder to explain afterward. At least a printed rule can be pointed at with one careful finger. The hierarchy remains present even when hats come off. The boss in a paper crown is still the boss. A senior manager telling a poor joke still controls raises. A client with punch breath still represents business. You laugh when it is wise. You excuse yourself when it is necessary. You keep one eye on exits, clocks, and the women who understand that parties create situations paperwork will not acknowledge. Office parties can also be genuinely enjoyable. They offer music, warmth, gossip, small gifts, and a break from routine. A woman who spends the week typing another person's letters may enjoy being seen as lively, pretty, funny, or simply present without a stack of copy beside her. Friendships deepen over sandwiches. Tired people become briefly generous. Even the strict supervisor may reveal that she once had a fiancé, a story, and a laugh large enough to surprise the room. But the consequences are uneven. A man who overdrinks may be forgiven as festive. A woman who does so risks becoming evidence. A man who flirts may be playful. A woman who appears to encourage him may be judged. The party pretends everyone has stepped out of their roles, while quietly keeping score according to them. You choose your moments with care. You accept 1 cup, maybe 2. You laugh. Thank the host. Help clear plates because someone must. Retrieve your gloves and leave while the evening still has a respectable shape. On Monday, the paper streamers are gone, but memory remains in the corners. The office has celebrated itself. You have survived the celebration. Some documents arrive with a lowered voice, a closed door, and the instruction that this is confidential. You type resignation letters, personnel decisions, salary changes, client disputes, medical absences, complaints, and business matters that could rearrange several people's lives by Thursday. You may know who is being promoted, who is being dismissed, who is in debt, who is ill, and who is pretending not to be leaving for another firm. The office depends on your discretion while treating you as decorative furniture. The furniture, unfortunately for them, can read. Confidential work has a different temperature. The boss brings the draft himself, or calls you inside, or places a folder on your desk with one finger resting on it as though the paper might escape. His voice lowers. He says this must not go beyond the room. You nod, because nodding is part of the ritual, although the document will pass through your typewriter, your eyes, your hands, your carbon copies, and possibly your filing system before being locked away in a cabinet everyone believes is secure because it has a key. You learn to type without reacting. A salary increase for someone who complains loudly. A dismissal for someone who smiled at you that morning. A letter to a client admitting less than the company knows. A medical absence described in careful terms. A memo about restructuring, which is office language for chairs about to lose people. Your face remains neutral. Your fingers keep moving. The typewriter does not slow because sympathy has entered the room. Confidentiality is essential to business, and secretaries often handle it as naturally as envelopes. The job requires judgment. You must know what not to repeat, what not to leave on the desk, what not to mention over lunch, and what carbon sheets should not be reused. In a paper office, secrecy has texture. It is the turned-down folder, the locked drawer, the sealed envelope, the file labelled with initials instead of names, the message taken when the wrong person is nearby. The danger is that others may forget you know. Executives discuss matters in front of you because you are taking notes, which apparently makes you temporarily invisible. Men speak near your desk as though a woman with a pencil has become part of the wall. This is useful for them until it is not. You hear enough to understand patterns, motives, alliances, and contradictions. The office may not invite you into power, but it keeps leaving power in your tray. The burden is not only silence, it is carrying knowledge without being allowed to act on it. You may know a friend in another department will be disappointed. You may know a co-worker's job is at risk. You may know a raise has been denied for reasons that sound less solid when typed cleanly. You cannot always warn, question, or object. You file the paper and live with the fact that information has passed through you like cold water. Discretion can be a source of pride. You are trusted because you have earned it. Good secretaries are valued for judgment, loyalty, and the ability to keep business from spilling into the hallway. But the trust is uneven. You are trusted with secrets, not always with authority. Trusted to type the decision, not make it. Trusted to know the truth, not be changed by it. At closing time, the confidential file is locked away, the drawer clicks, the office relaxes, satisfied that the matter is contained. You pick up your handbag and leave with nothing in your hands. That is not the same as leaving empty. The office may not always state its expectations plainly, because the most powerful rules often prefer not to leave paperwork. A young, unmarried secretary is useful, presentable, and assumed to be on her way somewhere domestic. A married secretary may be tolerated, admired for steadiness, or quietly considered temporary. Pregnancy can alter everything, especially before stronger workplace protections exist. You learn how much of your private life the office feels entitled to consider public information. A ring on your finger, a doctor's appointment, or a change in your waistline can become career news without your permission. The assumptions begin quietly. A co-worker notices an engagement ring and asks whether you will keep working after the wedding, as though the typewriter has already begun packing your drawer. A supervisor congratulates you warmly, while also recalculating your usefulness. The office may not dislike marriage. It may approve of it very much, provided marriage happens in the proper order, with the proper man, and at a distance from payroll complications. The trouble is that a wife is often imagined as belonging first to a home and only temporarily to a desk. Some married women do continue working, of course. Some need the income. Some enjoy the job. Some support husbands in school, save for a house, help parents, or simply prefer not to treat competence as a premarital condition. But the culture around the office often assumes that paid work for a married woman is provisional, a bridge between girlhood and full domestic assignment. The bridge is expected to collapse politely when children arrive. Pregnancy brings the assumptions into sharper focus. Many employers expect pregnant women to resign or take leave once pregnancy becomes visible, sometimes through formal policy and sometimes through custom, pressure, or a conversation presented as concern. The language may be gentle, you should rest, the work may be too tiring, clients might notice, the office cannot adjust indefinitely. These statements sound practical, but they often share the same destination, your chair without you in it. Stronger protections against pregnancy discrimination are still years away, and individual experiences vary widely by employer, union presence, region, race, class, and necessity. A woman with a sympathetic boss may be treated differently from one in a strict corporate office. A black woman or working-class woman may face harsher assumptions and fewer options. A married secretary in a small firm may be valued deeply, yet still expected to step aside when maternity becomes visible. The rule is flexible enough to deny being a rule, which is how it survives. It arrives as concern, policy, custom, and ordinary conversation. Privacy becomes difficult. A doctor's appointment must be explained. Morning sickness must be hidden. A looser waistband may receive attention from women who recognize the signs and men who believe they are merely observant. You may delay telling the office until you must, not from dishonesty, but because information changes how people speak to you. Before the news, you are a secretary. After it, you are a future absence with a handbag. There can be joy in the news, and fear too. A wanted pregnancy can still threaten wages, routine, and identity. An unwanted or uncertain pregnancy can make the office feel suddenly full of eyes. You continue typing, answering calls, and filing papers while your private life becomes an administrative forecast for other people. The office may never write the rule down. It does not need to. It has already written it across the way everyone looks at your chair. Before you ever sat behind the desk, the newspaper had already sorted ambition by gender. Employment ads commonly divide work into male and female columns, as though ability itself has chosen separate typefaces. Under female help wanted, you find secretaries, typists, receptionists, clerks, telephone operators, salesgirls, and nurses. Under male help wanted, the future seems to have larger offices. You circle possibilities in pencil, measure your skills against the requirements, and understand the bargain being offered. The world of work is open, yes, but certain doors have been politely labelled for someone else. Even the paper seems to know where you are supposed to stand before you have asked. The Sunday paper is spread across the kitchen table, or folded carefully at a lunch counter, its pages smelling of ink, coffee, and practical hope. The advertisements are small, dense, and confident. They ask for neat girls, experienced stenographers, accurate typists, pleasant receptionists, mature women, attractive voices, and sometimes a photograph, because apparently the alphabet works better when accompanied by cheekbones. A line may request speed in words per minute, knowledge of shorthand, good grooming, cheerful personality, or ability to meet the public. A phrase that sounds simple until you remember the public includes everyone. The division between male and female listings does more than organize print. It organizes imagination. A young man scanning the male column may find management trainee, sales representative, accountant, engineer, draftsman, or junior executive. Some of these jobs require training. Some offer advancement. Some assume the applicant is beginning a career. In the female column, many jobs assume assistance, service, support, appearance, patience, and the likelihood that marriage will eventually collect you like outgoing male. This does not mean the work is worthless. Secretarial and clerical jobs can be skilled, respectable, and economically vital. But the printed columns teach you which ambitions are expected to sit where. You read the advertisements carefully. Salary may be listed, but often it is vague, competitive, or to be discussed, which allows everyone to pretend money is not the central reason anyone has purchased a newspaper before breakfast. Some ads ask for experience, which is challenging if no one will hire you without it. Others promise training, though the promise may lead to a switchboard, a typing pool, or a desk, where advancement moves at the speed of office furniture. Race shapes the page even when the print does not say so. Many offices discriminate openly or quietly, limiting opportunities for black women, immigrant women, and other women outside the preferred image of the front office. An ad may appear neutral while the employer's door is not. The newspaper sorts by gender, and society continues sorting at the interview, sometimes with a smile so polished it almost passes for fairness. The application process carries its own rituals. You dress carefully, bring references, perhaps take a typing test, answer questions about experience, education, marital status, and whether you plan to stay. Staying means different things depending on who asks. A man staying suggests loyalty. A woman staying too long may suggest that marriage has failed to perform its scheduled duties. Still, you circle the ad. You prepare yourself. You go. The small printed box has offered wages, a desk, and a route into the city's working life. It has also quietly explained the ceiling. You fold the newspaper and tuck it under your arm. The future has been advertised. It comes in columns, and one of them has already made several decisions on your behalf. Between files, coffee cups, powder room mirrors, lunch counters, and whispered conversations at the typing pool, women build a second office beneath the official one. This network carries warnings, advice, jokes, sympathy, job leads, salary rumours, doctor recommendations, and the truth about which executive should never be allowed to dictate after lunch. What outsiders dismiss as gossip can be a survival system with better records than management. You learn who can be trusted, who repeats everything, and who will cover your phone when you need 5 minutes to become human again. The official office has departments, titles, memos, and doors. The second office has glances, pauses, lowered voices, and the kind of information no organizational chart is brave enough to contain. It begins with small exchanges. Someone tells you the copier is smearing again. Someone warns you that Mr. Blake is in a mood. Someone slips you a spare sheet of carbon paper when your drawer is empty. These gestures seem ordinary, but they are the threads that keep a long day from unraveling. Friendship grows in narrow spaces. The powder room becomes a temporary headquarters with mirrors, sinks, handbags, lipstick, tissues, and the soft click of compact cases opening like confidential files. There, women repair makeup, straighten seams, calm themselves after difficult calls, and say what cannot be said at the desk. A woman may confess that her boss shouted. Another may say that hers is merely impossible before coffee. Someone knows of a better opening at another firm. Someone else has heard which department pays more. The room smells of face powder, soap, perfume, and cigarettes clinging to wool. It is not official space, but it may be the only place where the truth is allowed to sit down. Lunch extends the network beyond the building. At a counter or cafeteria table, you trade office intelligence with the careful generosity of people who know information can mean money, safety, or sanity. Which supervisor gives fair references? Which doctor listens? Which landlord has a vacancy? Which office hires married women? Which man is harmlessly awkward, and which one is best avoided near the supply room? These are not idle subjects. They are practical navigation in a world where formal protections are limited and official channels may be controlled by the very people causing the problem. The network can be tender, but it is not perfect. Offices contain competition, jealousy, prejudice, and fear. Not every woman is kind. Not every secret remains secret. Race, class, age, and status shape who is included and who is left outside the whisper. A new girl may be tested. An older secretary may be respected, feared, or ignored until everyone needs her knowledge. A black secretary in an office dominated by white co-workers may face exclusion even inside spaces that seem female and friendly from a distance. The second office has its own politics, and friendship does not automatically remove the habits of the wider world. Still, its value is immense. It helps you interpret moods, survive mistakes, find opportunities, and laugh at absurdities that would be unbearable if faced alone. A shared look across the typing pool can reduce a man's entire speech to a footnote. A whispered, "I know," can rescue an afternoon from loneliness. By closing time, the official records are filed in cabinets. The unofficial records remain with the women who carried the day. Management has led the office. The office friendship network has explained it, corrected it, endured it, and quietly warned you where the loose floorboards are. At the end of the day, the office empties unevenly. Men leave with hats, briefcases, and the impression that business has concluded. You remain long enough to cover the typewriter, straighten papers, place tomorrow's urgent items where they can be discovered by someone else as though by magic, and check that no confidential file is lying open like an accusation. The air smells of paper, dust, cold coffee, machine oil, and the faint ghost of cigarettes. You put on your gloves, switch off the lamp, and know that when morning comes, the office will once again appear organized. It will not mention who arranged that. The closing ritual is quiet, and because it is quiet, the office mistakes it for nothing. You clear the trays, but not completely. Some papers must remain visible enough to be remembered, others hidden enough not to alarm visitors, and a few placed directly in the path of a man who has mastered the art of overlooking anything more than 6 inches from his hand, unless it is lunch. You check the calendar, transfer unfinished calls, mark the first task for tomorrow, and leave a note written clearly enough to survive morning confusion. The typewriter is brushed, covered, and left waiting with the patience of a machine that knows it will be blamed again. Carbon paper is returned to its folder. Pencils are sharpened. The appointment book closes with a soft final sound. Around you, the building settles. Doors click. Elevators hum. Somewhere down the hall, a wastebasket is emptied. The last footsteps fade into the lobby. Fluorescent lights continue their pale insistence overhead, making the desks look exposed and slightly tired. Without people, The office seems less important and more honest. Chairs pushed back, ashtrays used, coffee rings avoided or not, blotters marked by pressure, file drawers not quite flush. The day's labour pressed into surfaces. You see what business looks like after it has stopped speaking. It looks like paper waiting for women to return. Your own desk receives the final attention because it has earned ceremony. Handbag lifted from the drawer, gloves found, compact checked, perhaps a laddered stocking examined with resignation, perhaps a note tucked away, a pay envelope moved deeper into the bag, or a personal letter remembered just before leaving. The desk has contained the official and unofficial parts of you all day, company correspondence above, private life below, both separated by a drawer front and a rule nobody needed to explain. If your boss is still present, he may call out one last instruction just as you are nearly free. A letter to type tomorrow, a reminder to make, a file he will need first thing. First thing means before he arrives, naturally, because many men enjoy deadlines most when someone else meets them invisibly. You write it down, you say good night. He thanks you absently, already belonging to the world beyond the office. You belong there too, but first you must make sure the window is closed, the confidential drawer locked, and the desk lamp switched off. At the elevator, you hear the building behind you holding its breath. Tomorrow, it will wake with bells, keys, voices, and demands. Tonight, it rests in the order you left behind. You step into the evening with sore feet, clean gloves, and the strange satisfaction of having made the day appear simpler than it was. The office is closed. Your work is merely hidden, tucked neatly inside tomorrow's apparent order. And because that work is hidden, it can follow you farther than the office door. The building is behind you now, its windows glowing in neat rectangular rows, each light suggesting order from a distance and paper trouble from within. You step into the evening with your handbag under your arm, your gloves buttoned or folded, your shoes a little less friendly than they were that morning, and the day still arranged inside your head in stacks. The office is closed, but your mind has not received the memorandum. It continues to sort messages, remember appointments, worry over a name on a letter, and wonder whether the copy for Mr. Lewis was placed in the correct folder or merely near the correct folder, which is not the same thing and never has been. The street is filled with other people leaving other buildings, all carrying small proofs that modern work has not ended so much as changed locations. Men walk toward trains with briefcases swinging beside them, already shedding the day because someone else has usually kept the details. Women move more carefully, watching curbs, stockings, parcels, weather and time. A bus sighs at the corner. A streetcar grinds along its track. A shop window reflects your outline back at you. Blouse still neat, hair still respectable, face still wearing the remains of office composure. You look like someone finished with work. This is one of evening's little jokes. If you live in a rooming house, you may return to a narrow bed, a shared bath, a radiator with opinions, and a dresser holding a few careful possessions. If you live with parents, there may be questions about the day, dinner to help with, younger siblings to listen to, and the delicate matter of bringing home wages while still being treated as someone's daughter under the family roof. If you are married, the second shift may begin almost at once, though nobody in the 1950s calls it that with the confidence it deserves. There may be groceries, laundry, dishes, a husband's workday to hear about, and your own workday to compress into something smaller. Because office stories told by women are often expected to arrive trimmed, pleasant, and not too full of fatigue. You may say it was fine. You may say it was busy. Busy is a useful word. It is short, respectable, and leaves no stain. The commute home has a different sound from the commute in. Morning has urgency. Evening has release, irritation, perfume fading into wool, newspapers folded under arms, and people staring through windows as the city slides past. Your feet ache in your shoes. Your fingers may still remember the typewriter keys, twitching faintly as though invisible letters are being struck against the air. The body keeps records even when the office files have been locked. Wrists know the weight of the day. Shoulders know the posture. Eyes know the small print, the carbon copy, the calendar square, the row of figures that had to balance because numbers have never cared whether anyone is tired. You sit if there is a seat, stand if there is not, and hold the strap with the quiet endurance of someone who has already spent several hours being useful. Around you, people carry newspapers, lunch bags, parcels from department stores, and gossip folded into silence. You may see another secretary from another floor and exchange a nod. Nothing grand passes between you. It does not need to. The nod says the phones rang. The men forgot. The machines jammed. And somehow the world is still pretending the office ran itself. At home, the clothing comes off in stages, each piece releasing part of the day. Gloves first, hat or scarf. Shoes, if mercy is available. Stockings inspected again, because they have survived one battle and must be assessed before the next. A blouse may be hung carefully if it can be worn again, because laundry is labour and fabric is budget. The handbag is opened like a small archive. Coins, keys, compact, comb, receipts, a pay envelope if it is payday, a folded note, a lipstick, perhaps a aspirin tin, perhaps a scrap of paper with a telephone number you must remember to copy somewhere safer. The handbag knows the overlap between office and life. It has carried evidence for both. Dinner may be waiting, or it may be your responsibility to help create it. The kitchen, if there is one, has its own machinery of expectation. Plates, pans, hot water, towels, a table to set, food to stretch, conversation to arrange. If you live alone, there can be freedom in a simple supper, eaten in peace beside a radio or a magazine. Though loneliness may sit in the other chair with excellent posture. If you live with others, privacy may be rationed. You may want quiet, but the household has claims. Someone asks whether you typed many letters. Someone asks whether your boss is nice. Someone asks whether there are any nice men at the office, because apparently employment is never entirely trusted unless it might lead back to marriage. You answer gently, because you have been answering gently all day. The language of the office may spill into home without permission. You remind someone of an appointment. You arrange a bill near the door. You notice that the calendar needs marking. You write a note so nobody forgets the milk, the doctor, the rent, the library book, the birthday. The same skills that made you valuable at work make you useful everywhere, which is both practical and slightly unfair. Efficiency follows you like a well-trained but demanding dog. You may find yourself straightening papers on a table that is not yours to manage, organising a drawer, remembering a cousin's address, or composing a polite reply in your head to a letter that deserves a less polite reply in reality. Once a woman is known to be capable, capability begins receiving invitations from every direction. There is also the emotional afterlife of the day. The compliment that felt too close may return while you brush your hair. The unfair pay may return while you count coins. The promotion memo for the young man you trained may return while you fold a blouse. The confidential letter may sit inside you, unopened and impossible to discard. In a paper office, secrecy ends when the drawer locks. In a human being, it remains more complicated. You may not tell anyone who is leaving, who is being dismissed, who is ill, who is angry, who is pretending to be loyal while sending letters elsewhere. You carry knowledge home without visibly carrying anything at all. This is one of the secretarial arts no business school advertises. The ability to know too much and say too little, then sleep badly because silence has weight. And yet the evening is not only burden. It has its small mercies, a warm bath, if the household allows time, a fresh nightgown, a radio program murmuring softly from another room, a cup of tea, a cigarette by an open window, a magazine open to fashion pages full of women who never appear to have corrected a carbon copy in their lives, a letter from a friend, a phone call made from the hall, voice lowered because walls in rented places are known to be curious, a joke remembered from lunch that becomes funnier once the boss is safely far away, a pair of stockings mended while music plays, the pleasure of removing shoes and discovering that pain can be negotiated downward. There are friendships, ambitions, crushes, private plans, savings tucked away, classes considered, apartments imagined, and futures that do not fit neatly inside the office's assumptions. The secretary is not merely tired, she is also alive, observant, deciding. The world may call her a girl, but she may be supporting parents, paying rent, surviving harassment, managing confidential information, and keeping an entire department from collapsing into stationery. Girl is a small word trying to hold a grown woman. It strains at the seams. In the quiet of the evening, you may think about what you want. Perhaps not in grand speeches, because grand speeches require time and privacy, both of which can be scarce. But the thought comes anyway. You may want a raise, a better office, a kinder boss, a different city. A husband, or no husband yet, or no husband at all, which the world may find unnecessarily imaginative. You may want a desk of your own behind a door. You may want college classes at night, bookkeeping credentials, a civil service position, a union office, a newspaper job, a small apartment with curtains chosen by nobody else. You may want only sleep. Wanting only sleep after such a day is not a failure of ambition. It is a reasonable response to being awake in history. Around you, the 1950s continue with their bright advertisements, polished shoes, chrome surfaces, new appliances, suburban promises, office towers, crowded buses, and all the cheerful public confidence of a society that has not yet apologized to the women holding its paperwork. The decade likes neatness. It likes categories, Miss and Mrs., male and female, office and home, important and supportive, career and temporary job, but real life keeps smudging the lines, like carbon paper on a clean cuff. Women work because they need money, because they want independence, because they are skilled, because families depend on them, because the city calls, because home is not enough, because home is too much, because work offers something and takes something, and gives them a place to stand that is not always secure but is still theirs. You are part of that complicated truth as you move through the evening. You may not use the future's vocabulary for discrimination, emotional labour, harassment, glass ceilings, reproductive rights, or unpaid work. Those words may not yet be widely available, or may not yet sound familiar in ordinary offices, but the experiences exist before the language settles around them. You know when something is unfair even if the official phrase has not arrived. You know when a joke is not harmless. You know when a wage is too small. You know when a man's confusion has been promoted and a woman's competence has been filed. History does not begin when the right words are printed. Often it begins with someone at a desk thinking, quietly and correctly, this is not quite right. The evening deepens, windows brighten then darken. Somewhere another office is being cleaned. Somewhere, a secretary's typewriter waits under its cover like a sleeping animal. Somewhere, a filing cabinet contains a letter typed by a woman whose name is not on it. The city exhales smoke, steam, dinner smells, bus brakes, and the low murmur of radios through apartment walls. You place tomorrow's clothes where you can find them. You set your alarm. You check your stockings, your handbag, your small supplies of order. Morning will come with its telephone, its appointments, its coffee, its urgent papers, its men who cannot locate what they have placed on their own desks. But for now, the work recedes. Not completely, because hidden labour rarely leaves all at once. It loosens its grip one finger at a time. You let the files blur. You let the calendar close. You let the office shrink into a lit window far behind you. What remains is the knowledge that the day was not small simply because others called it clerical. It was skilled, watchful, disciplined, and human. It was 1,000 careful acts performed so smoothly that they disappeared. And tonight, at least, the disappearance can end. You can see the work. You can honour the woman who carried it. You can let her put down the handbag, loosen the collar, and rest in the quiet she spent all day earning. And now the office can finally grow quiet. The typewriters are covered, the carbon paper has stopped threatening your cuffs, the filing cabinets are shut, and the telephone, for once, has no opinion. You have spent the day inside a world where a woman could hold together calendars, correspondence, clients, machines, moods, and confidential disasters, while still being asked to smile as though administrative survival were a charming little hobby. You have seen the stockings, the shorthand pads, the lunch counters, the pay envelopes, the office parties, the whispered warnings, and the rules that did not need to be printed because everyone already knew who was expected to obey them. From here, it is easy to feel grateful for modern comforts, clearer workplace protections, wider career paths, better tools, more privacy, and the blessed ability to correct a sentence without performing surgery on paper. But gratitude should not become smugness. The women who worked in those 1950s offices were not merely background figures with neat hair and good margins. They were skilled, observant, funny, tired, ambitious, careful, and often far more essential than the titles on the doors admitted. They remembered what others forgot. They softened what others broke. They translated confusion into order, irritation into politeness, and endless paper into something that looked like progress. So let the office fade now. Let the fluorescent lights dim. Let the elevator doors close. Let the city outside soften into evening, with footsteps on pavement, buses sighing at the curb, and one tired secretary carrying home a handbag full of small necessities and a mind full of things she was trusted to know but not always invited to say. You are back in your own room now. The files can wait. The telephone can ring somewhere else. Pull the blanket a little closer. Let your shoulders loosen, and let the day release you gently. Thank you for spending this quiet time here. Sleep well, rest deeply, and good night.